Hello and welcome to another episode of the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. This is John Jantz, and my guest today is Debbie Howard. She is the co-founder and CEO of Senior Living Smart, a full-service marketing agency focused exclusively on the senior housing and care industry. She's also a proud member of the Duct Tape Marketing Network for the last 3 years, so I guess we're going to probably talk about that too. So Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Such a pleasure to be here.
So tell me how you got your business started. Not everybody wakes up one day and says, I think I'm going to start a marketing business that caters to the senior living space. So how did you kind of come to where you are now?
Yeah, never my dream either, John. Well, myself and my business partner, Andrea, we grew up in the senior living industry, and we both started kind of at the single community location. I was in sales and marketing, and Andrea was in operations and dementia care. And we just kind of rose through the ranks with some of the largest senior living operators, publicly traded companies, in regional, divisional, and then national VP positions. And before starting Senior Living Smart, I was a national VP of sales and marketing for 5 Star, which was the 5th largest senior living company. And we just decided that we thought we had something that we could bring the industry from the perspective of having worked in the industry, and then translating that into solutions that were more realistic than what people were proposing who really hadn't grown up in the industry.
Yeah, so it's funny, you were kind of on the other side. I mean, you were being pitched by people like you, right?
Yeah.
Now today. And so did you have that kind of moment where you just said, what people are pitching us is not where, we could do so much better. I mean, was it kind of that aha, I guess?
I think the aha was just that we always had to bring them the ideas. Like they were a marketing agency that just kind of said, oh, well, what do you want us to do this quarter?
Right.
And so because they didn't know the industry, they just didn't have that ability to come into the conversation with something, innovative. And so we just found that the industry was just borrowing examples from other people within the industry. And, we're not a tremendously innovative and technology savvy industry. So if all that we're doing is looking inside of ourselves to get those ideas and concepts and marketing strategies, we're probably just going to look a lot like everybody else. And it was very just vanilla. It was all very generic. And we thought there has to be a way to really, elevate the conversation within our industry.
As anybody with aging parents will probably tell you, certainly, and that's, again, a lot of the people that are making the decision with their parents, hopefully. It's a really emotional purchase, probably one of the more emotional purchases anybody will make. How does that kind of color your thinking in terms of, marketing? Obviously, you're not marketing a $29 product or even, a very expensive, course or program. You're marketing something pretty expensive, but also something terribly emotional.
It is. It's so emotional. It's not transactional at all. And so the approach has to be relational. Yeah. And I think that the difficult thing is you're really pitching to 2 audiences kind of simultaneously. So mostly, for assisted living and memory care, which is more needs driven, your primary audience is the adult children, usually the adult daughter, John. The guys are like, well, maybe my sister will take this conversation. And so mostly it's the adult daughters or daughter-in-laws. But then you still have to have a compelling message for your future residents so that they're going to see the value and benefit of moving into a community environment. Whereas if you're dealing with, active adult, 55 plus, Margaritaville, it can be a lot more aspirational, a lot more creative, and a lot more fun. And those messages, the primary audience is then the older adult who's going to be living in the community, but they're always going to have to be supported by, their adult children influencers who still need to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, well, when the decision's been made and it's time to call somebody to put the move together, you call the guy then, though, right?
Oh yeah, you call the guy. Yeah, and when it's time to sign the contract, pay the bills.
So, you mentioned the idea that the industry was a little behind in the digital space, like a lot of industries. Again, you talked about this relational aspect, the fact that there's a physical location as opposed to, say, a virtual, purchase. Do you find that in some ways, while they need to come into the modern age and digital is here to stay, do you also find though that some of the what we might call old school or traditional or offline, kind of
Yeah.
hybrid, approaches are a significant part of what you need to do?
Yeah, it's definitely a hybrid approach. And, certainly direct mail is still, in the mix and is very effective. Our audience still gets the newspaper and still, goes
Yeah.
out and gets that mail and responds to it. It's just a matter of integrating it. So use of QR codes, things like, Bitly's that can track the engagement, Eventbrite, other event type systems that you
Mm,
can get RSVPs, where maybe the initial touch point might be a traditional marketing, might be newspaper
yeah.
or direct mail, ends up being a digital transaction. But the fact that it is so relational and it's so emotional means that you have to kind of be on all channels all the time, but with different messages. And I think that's really the compelling part, and the length of the sales cycle, especially with the pandemic.
Mm.
Assisted living has increased their sales cycle by about 36%. It takes
Wow.
over 200 days and 22 touch points to go from maybe a realization that I've got to have a different solution. Mom's or dad's not as being successful at home as they were. They need a more supportive environment. 22 touch points in like 200 days to get to decision. And so there's a lot of marketing within those 22 touch points.
So let's talk a little bit about your journey some more too. Uh, if what'd you start your business 5 years ago ish?
Actually, it was 10 years, but we just
Oh,
became a
okay.
marketing agency 5 years ago.
Okay. So let's start there. What's been the hardest thing as you've grown? And again, maybe it's like, well, next week is the hardest thing, right? But
Yeah.
what's kind of what do you find has always been a constant struggle for you?
I think for us, it's just trying to differentiate and then
Mm,
scale. And I think that's really why we entered, into conversations around Duct Tape Marketing Network, because, we were trying to figure it out on our own. We'd never owned a marketing agency. It wasn't our intention
yeah.
to do that. It was really just people kept saying, Deb, your background is all sales and marketing. We just need leads. We just need occupancy. Why don't you just focus on marketing? And so it was really external forces that kind of narrowed our scope of our work, which was more general consulting in nature, operations and dementia care and everything else. So we landed about 5 years ago on, okay, all you need are leads. Okay, that's great. I can do that. We can do that as a team. But then we really lacked, I think, having the system to
Mm,
scale. And, to me, we were looking for, okay, now we've got to figure out how to do contracts and what our processes is and how to document our ways of working and how do we make things turnkey and scalable and how do we onboard new clients and how do we onboard new team members. And we just didn't have the time to kind of start from scratch. And so Duct Tape Marketing really offered us the ability to go into resources that are, it's much easier to be an editor than to start from scratch. So I
yeah,
could go
yeah.
in and download something and then make it work for our team or for our industry. So that really became the biggest focus for us. Was, I feel like we've licensed a system that gives us a framework, and that framework resonates with prospects who most of the time don't understand marketing, feels kind of fluffy, into a system that they can really understand. You can't argue with the fact that you need to be on all these channels and they need
Yeah.
to integrate. No one can argue with that. And it also gives us a framework as a team as well.
So as you've grown your business, what I guess the flip side of what's been a challenge, what's really been the most rewarding aspect of kind of where you are today?
I think it's just really seeing the results. We're into our quarterly reporting and talking to, clients saying, thank you for bringing us, these ideas that we would never have thought of on our own. It's really helped. Other agencies have just executed to what, we've kind of laid out in terms of a roadmap, but you've really come in and said, hey, why don't we try this? Whether it's virtual events, that was totally new to our industry before
Yeah.
COVID. It was all driving people, into the community, and we had to, reimagine that whole experience. And so being creative and innovative within a space that probably isn't known for being creative and innovative is probably, the most rewarding.
You have, chosen a fairly narrow niche. That's a lot of people give that advice for marketers.
Yeah.
Have there? I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you feel like working in one very narrow niche? Um, I mean, are there pros and cons to each? I mean, do you sometimes wake up and go, "Oh, it's great. We got another new client, but wouldn't it be interesting if we had a client that did, something we weren't familiar with?" so, again, obviously, you're happy where you are. You love the niche you're in. That's why you chose it. But I'm just curious if you have ever thought to yourself, there's kind of pros and cons to
There definitely are pros and cons, and I think you would go crazy in a niche industry, John. You'd be like, "I'm bored. I need to learn something new." For us, we've grown up in this industry. We know it inside out and backwards,
that.
and it just really makes sense. I don't need to go out and learn about people who have carpentry companies or car repair companies. It really is that expertise. I think where it can really be a con is if you allow it to get, kind of that wash, rinse, repeat,
Yeah.
and you end up, there's advantages to being turnkey, and to have, some packaged strategies that work consistently. But then you've got to tie into each individual client and really understand their personas, their better and different story. And then I think you have to constantly be intentional about innovation. And, that's another thing I really appreciate about being part of the network is I don't have the time always to go out and demo a million solutions. I get pitched a lot. I'm sure you get pitched a lot. And to be able to go and have a network and say, "Hey, has anyone tried this? Are you using it now? Or, can you give me some insight into how you're applying this?" It's a great time saver, but because we have to constantly be fresh, to keep our teams engaged and to keep our clients engaged for year after year, from a retention standpoint.
Yeah, and I'm sure every industry has these players. I know that in your industry there are people that focus on that niche also. But you're right. I think some people take that approach and think, "Oh, we can just template this entire thing, and we're basically just selling a product." Then without any strategy behind it. I'm sure you encounter that all the time, don't you?
Yeah, especially like we have in our industry, some website providers that,
Yeah.
here's 5 templates, pick your website. They all look alike. They're terrible. They don't perform well. But people feel like it's an easy button.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
basically renting your website. You really don't own it. And so, I think for us, we've kind of developed 3 sub niches. So we have the for-profit senior living space, which is rental. We have the not-for-profit, which is, a buy-in kind of life plan
Mhm.
guarantee. And then we've actually evolved into business to business, companies that serve the senior
All
living
right.
industry. Yeah, so we kind of have 3 different sub verticals, and that also keeps it really interesting and really fresh.
Yeah, and one of the things that drives me crazy when I've come across some of those, like the legal profession is notorious for them as well, is that they also lock people into these websites, and then if you want to
Yeah,
leave, it's like, well, okay, see you later, but you're starting from scratch now,
yeah.
and people don't realize, 3, 4, 5 years down the road how damaging that's going to be for their business, do they?
Right. They don't understand the consequences. And in our industry, they do 2-year contracts, which auto renew. If you
Yeah.
miss that window, you are stuck. And we've had clients that have had to pay $60,000 to buy out so that we can build them something good on WordPress. And really, it just breaks my heart that people are still kind of falling for that. Oh, here for $500, $600 a month,
Right.
we'll do your website, and then you try to get reports, and they're like, "Oh, you don't need those." And then we try to get into run Google AdWord campaigns, and then the client finds out they don't actually own their Google ad
Right.
account. They don't have access to their Google Analytics. This website company really owns them, which is not a good place to be.
Well, I mean, it's basically extortion,
Yeah.
frankly. So let's call it what it is. So talk a little bit about the growth of your organization, because you've shared some numbers with me or some percentages with
Yeah.
me, and you've had pretty significant growth over the last couple of years. What do you attribute that to?
So yeah, when I think when we first started, John, when we came into the network, I think we had four. There were four people. It was myself, my partner, and then one full time person, and then one contract person. And now, 3 years later, we are a team of 26
Mm,
full time employees, and then we do some outsourcing of copywriters, graphic designers, just kind of for overflow when our full time team might get overwhelmed. And I would say, bringing things in house. I think when we first started, John, the reason we were
mm,
able to do that is we did outsource a lot to some white label agencies that would kind of do the work. And that worked for a while. But honestly, I think as an agency owner, we just came to realize that the only way that you can really maintain the quality of your work is you have to bring it in house. And so making that decision was a huge thing for us. And, frankly, conversations with you and other mastermind, folks really kind of gave us the confidence to go ahead and make that adjustment. But we have, we double in size every year in terms of revenue. And I think a lot of that is we have found a way to make it scalable, to leverage, the duct tape marketing system, mapped out the prospect journey. Retention is really important. So we have clients who've, been with us for 5 years, which I think is unusual
yeah,
for agency life.
yeah.
Um, but I would say that those are the things that have really kept us, I think, competitive.
So you talked about, I think, coming up in the industry, but that you really have this approach where you want to continue to be innovative. Are there any trends going on that you've spotted over the last year or two that you've been able to take advantage of, or maybe they're even just maybe it's just a gap in the market that people aren't filling?
Yeah, there's a lot of gaps. I mean, senior housing and care just it seems to be kind of the last adopters. So probably things you were talking about 5 years ago in this podcast are things that our industry is going, hey, there's there's chat and there's bots and there's these other things that kind of maybe we should try out. So in our industry, I would say 2023 really leveraging SMS
Mm,
is something that we have to do. People just that's where folks are, right?
yeah.
Search, social, email, and text. And so I think building those types of campaigns and then really using video more creatively are two of the things that we're focused on. We just had a call with a vendor who is kind of we're all trying to figure out about the anonymous traffic, right, and the traffic that we can no longer track and we can no
Right.
longer retarget. And I think that's going to become an increasing need. Is I think right now we can only probably track and retarget to about 30% of our website traffic. Google Chrome is kind of the last bastion, and only 50% of people are on that, and 40% of those folks block the tracking. And so really you're down to about 30%. And so things like being able to reverse, IP match back to physical addresses, or using longitude and latitudinal to get a household address, whether that's to serve up direct mail or to
Hmm.
even serve, ads to the devices that reside, at that house. I think some of those types of things where you're really blending that hybrid
Yeah.
marketing model and really personalizing. To your point, it is a relational sale.
Mm.
And you've got to personalize that journey down to the individual and their motivation and their time frame and what level of care they're interested in. And so I think the better job we can do with that, the hopefully the more we can impact that very long sales cycle to build trust a little bit quicker.
It's funny. Of course, this is going to come to SMS, and it's certainly email marketing, all the privacy, things that are
Mm-hmm.
coming out there in terms of what you talked about retargeting. But it's funny how the old school direct marketing, you and I have talked about this. I mean, you can go buy a mail list that has a lot of data on it that you could never get or capture or track or keep online. And I think that we're going to maybe see a resurgence of direct mail because of that.
Totally. I mean, we can get, unfortunately, or
Yes.
fortunately, I guess for us, it's a good thing. I don't know. But we can get ailment criteria. So I
Yeah.
can purchase a list of people who have self identified and have agreed to share certain diagnoses, Alzheimer's and dementia, and all of the things that typically trigger the need for a more supportive, environment as people age. And, we can even look at, people who have a senior in their home. So
Mhm.
we'll be able to know that this person is probably taking care of a family member, and we know that there's a time frame where that may not be possible, and we can have a very specific campaign that just goes to those households where there is one senior within a household, or people who have different diseases or certain needs. It's amazing how much information. There's no privacy on the list side, and if you have a really good list,
Yeah.
we have a great list guy.
Yep. 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 So, and again, this is you've been a great member of the Duct Tape Marketing Consultant Network. You've been a great collaborator and sharer, and I appreciate you saying kind things that you say about duct tape marketing. Having said that, what are some other places where you get personal development, business development? Where are some places you like to turn for that?
So I do listen to a lot of podcasts and webinars. I would say, just from a timing standpoint, the in-person things unfortunately have uh, certainly minimized in our industry. So
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
reading, and it's webinars, and it's podcasts. I would say, even listening to master classes. They have amazing master
Yeah.
classes,
Yeah. Yeah.
which are, you can always find those nuggets in those types of learnings, I think.
Yeah. I don't commute anywhere. And so I sometimes find it tough. I'm not a person that can sit down and watch a video course. I get bored
Yeah.
very quickly. But I find that like going out walking, or driving for a long distance or something, if I ever end up having like a trip that I'm making or something, that's really where I can consume a lot of audio content. But I do find it, this is really sad for a podcaster who's done as many shows as me to say I don't listen to many podcasts because I just don't. It hasn't worked into my habit.
Well, you're a big reader, though.
I am a big reader. Yeah,
And I think you read and listen at the same time, so you're doubling your
I
intake.
do that sometimes. You're right. You've heard me talk about that. It's not really the. It's not a. I'm not listening and reading two different things. I'm actually listening to the audio version while I'm reading it, and so I feel like I really retain a lot more by doing that. So, Debbie, I certainly appreciate you taking time to stop by the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. Is there anywhere you want to send people if they heard this and they thought, oh, I'd like to follow that Debbie or connect with her? Anywhere you want to send folks to learn more about what you're doing?
So probably LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That would be a good spot. Or on our website, seniorlivingsmart.com.
Awesome. Well, Debbie, hopefully we'll run into you one of these days soon again out there on the road.
I hope so, John. Thank you so much.